Okay, so Ron, I've been wanting to ask you this for a long time. So you've been on this journey at the edge, okay? From Ariaka now to CATO. And so you went from kind of, doing this thing at rapid scale to looking at compute, to understanding what that looked like, being a network guy before that. And now you're one of the, elite mindsets around kind of this edge SASE SD-WAN strategy in play, both around security and performance at the network level. So when you think about what's made you special, what you've embraced in that world, what's that differentiator, and how have you done that, and how have you built the channel to tell that story?
Yeah, good question. So when I was at Rapid Scale, I didn't know, going from the network side, years in network, I didn't understand anything about the applications. What Rapid Scale taught me was on the application layer, what it was doing, mainly from a Citrix perspective, right? And how we bundled everything up. And then from there, it was interesting when Ariaka came around, I went with Ariaka, that was the most important thing, was the applications, is what the applications were doing. Critical-based applications versus non-critical. Non-critical, Facebook, YouTube, but the importance that it was to the organization, right? And what they cared about. And so what we did was we built this network and this really optimization or application optimization based upon critical, non-critical applications. We had a really cool algorithm in there that did some compression that made those applications go faster, and then learning about the VLAN. Then, being there, I was there for 3 years. And then when I saw what we were missing at Ariaka to CATO, and again, hopefully no one's in here from Ariaka, but this is nothing against them. We didn't have security, because what we were doing was we were VLANing traffic, and we were VLANing non-critical application at the edge. So that needed to be secured. And then we would take the critical applications to the core doing the cache and compression. And so what I saw was Palo Alto, or we needed some kind of premise-based equipment at the edge. And I was looking around, and then CATO kind of out of nowhere, they slowly started coming around. I heard their name, and then just so happens one of our VP of sales at the time at Ariaka had chose to go over there, and he brought me over about 7 months later. And he asked me, he said, hey, we got to build out this program. Can we take it to, who do we need to take it to the market first? And we said, okay, look, I think it's too early for the MSPs and the VARs because they were still in that OEM model. And the service providers didn't want to look at us because they were still at the Meraki's, the Velo Clouds, the Versas, and the Fortinets, right? So I said, okay, we can't go that route. But who knew the network first? The referral agent model, the TA model. And so we said, okay, we're going to go all chips in with the TA model. We're going to give FOMO to the MSP VARs as well as the service providers. We crushed it. I'm close to $100 million, building $100 million in 7 years within the agent community. And from that, it spurred the service provider model. We've got, I think, 8 service providers now, some of the largest ones. They saw that, look, we don't sell network. We're an CATO's an over-the-top solution, which I always tell people we're like Netflix. I don't say you're internet, I just right on top. And it's the same thing goes. So that's happened, and then with that, the MSP VARs are taking place. Now, the difference I didn't get back to with Ariaka and CATO is CATO has a security solution. We're SD-WAN at the edge, cloud-based firewall in the core, and then we also do ZTNA for the remote users. So really, that's our 3 core. We call it SASE. Gartner calls it SASE, thank goodness, and we're now the leader in the quadrant. But that's really, if you take the onion and peel it back, it's those 3 products. SD-WAN at the edge, cloud-based firewall, and then ZTNA. I don't know, did I get everything, Brandon, on that? But yeah, that's the reason what I've seen the journey is, and again, it goes back to the applications. Now it's securing those applications once it goes through our cloud-based firewalls. And so now take, what CATO's core differentiator, SD-WAN at the edge, but we've got this global backbone. I think we're at 95, again, plus pops globally. So we're dispersed all around the globe. And then, again, in those pops is our cloud-based firewall. You want to make a change in your firewall settings, it makes change all the way around the world instantly.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how big of an issue that is. I mean, it's enormous. I've seen, I can go back years and there were outages because there were changes at the firewall level and they weren't all synced.
Yeah, human keystroke happens all the time.
Keystroke mistakes crush companies and put a lot of companies under. So when you look at this journey on one other component, I think it's really important to bring this. I always saw you as an enterprise seller. I always saw you as this person that could tell a story beyond the norm. You've always been good at doing that. People like you because you can tell a story. You can get into a big company. You can get into a big company and sit side by side with an agent, and they want you at the table. They want you and a technology expert at the table. You're the storyteller. Your technologist is the technology part of that. But you are dynamic with that strategy. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about, how you've been able to win some of these big companies and kind of play with your technology person. Because from a partnership perspective, I know that's what Andrew looks at. You guys got a team of expert technologists that are solution engineers that can design the environment. You can go deeper and wider than most. Your technology stack is click, click, click. The boxes are checked for compliance and security. So all that plays into it. So when you look at the size customer, target focus, and engaged approach when you guys go out together, when you approach or somebody else approaches on a team, how does that look?
Yeah, good question. Early on in my career, look, when we're coming in and maybe I had less grays, and I was a young pup, a lot of people wouldn't take my calls or answer, wouldn't let me talk to the big. I get in the enterprise accounts, they just wouldn't take me seriously. I learned as the grays got better, my check got bigger. But what reality set in was, as I got older, I also figured out is what we were good at as far as basically taking our core product and aligning it with those enterprise companies. So I looked for, with CATO, we are great in China. We're great enterprise, globally dispersed locations around the world. Manufacturing, retail, anything that's dispersed at a global level. And the reason why is because I could solve their problems. I knew their problems are big. And if I could solve bigger problems, I could get into bigger enterprise accounts. Smaller accounts, good or bad, right? I'm not going to say anything good or bad about the SMB, but in that size space, they're traditionally looking to save money, cut costs, and they're always looking for, what's the cheap, they'll take a, lower cost route. And I couldn't solve as many of the problems because they would use like a Meraki solution, right? From a cost standpoint, it does its job. But dispersity, both from an application, physical sites, remote users, the farther those apart, I used to say the gnarlier they are, I want those, because those were getting into the larger deals. And that's what I focused on, was dispersity just based on global and size. Because there was some problems. I was just telling Andrew before we got up here is, one of the good partners I got, how he got into a very large account. He looked at it different, and I always ask people and partners I talk to in the channel ecosystem, it's kind of like, what did you do differently to get in these big accounts? And I was just telling him, he looked at it he went to the partner, they had tons of locations, I think it was like 2,000 locations. And he said, how much does it cost you to send out a truck every time? What does that cost to you? And if I can lower that hourly cost, and how long are they there? How much does it cost? How much, time does that take? And if I could lower that by X, which is a big percentage on 2,000 sites, that's how you get in large accounts. And he was able to basically show this client, hey, I can save you these good, solid costs based on these 3 years. You're sending out this many texts to this many sites. It costs X amount. He didn't go in there and talk about their telecom. He didn't go in there and talk about their application. He didn't talk about network. Talk about none of that. But he also sold them network inside of all of that. So it's just a different way of, I always look at the outliers and different ways of talking. That was where I had my success in the enterprise. Because just, where do you fit? But asking different questions that, that'll bring a lot better ROI for a larger company. It's just harder on the small ones.
Makes sense. And I'll give it over to Andrew and let Andrew dig in on how we're working together, how we're winning together, kind of what we're doing and what that looks like. Because I know we've got some case studies. We got some other deals with some banks and other ones on the table right now. So, maybe you guys can talk to that.
So what's happened, I don't know if you remember, it was probably 10 years ago that we were having, with Nick, having a conversation around replacing firewalls. You guys are saying,
I remember
no.
this.
And I'm like, well, if you're telling me this does all this, then why would we need a physical firewall at the edge, right? So now here we are, right? Fast forward, I was right.
We're sitting here. I think we were right.
That was one saying it would replace it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair.
And then, so talk to me, Brandon, you're seeing this too, but in the market, what I'm looking for CATO fits. Obviously there's, security, network security, and then network, right? Converged. What are you guys seeing overall out there? I mean, is the adoption of moving away from physical firewalls at the edge into more of a true SASE model or SSE? I mean, what overall are you seeing from a macro perspective in the market?
I'll answer from a sales perspective. You can answer from a technical. I think from a sales perspective, here's what we're seeing. We're seeing economies of scale. They just don't have the personnel, the staff. And so it's hard to have a security expert on staff paying 150 to 200 plus.
Absolutely.
On staff. I think staffing is hurting. You know, what we call the OEM sprawl, the hardware sprawl. We're saying, hey, we want to consolidate all those. And that's what CATO does. Again, we from the SD-WAN, displacing the MPLS, okay, yeah, that's just a OpEx cost that we're lowering. Displacing the firewalls, the physical firewalls, that's huge. Now you don't have to manage all these devices across the world. And then the ZTNA from a remote user is now they don't have to go out and buy VPN concentrators, even leveraging our backroom, they don't have to go out and buy like a
Express route.
well, that, and they don't have to buy like MPLS or even for QoS because we're providing the QoS. Now you can use a lower cost DIA at the edge. So yeah, it's kind of almost a combination from a sales perspective. From a technical.
Yeah, I mean, real similar on the technology front. I mean, it's you have less people from a management perspective. A lot of times it's appliance sprawl, right? So you're in a bunch of different interfaces. So converging that into a single solution. But beyond that, the correlation of information, right? Instead of having to bring all of that stuff into like a SIM or something like that and trying to figure out, paint the picture, at least especially on the security front. You know, when we're talking about different security vendors, none of those are talking to each other. What CATO is doing is actually correlating all that information across what would typically be a bunch of different providers, a bunch of different application stack or different edge components, and then correlating all that information on the security side, that's telling a story. You know, it's giving you the ability to actually be able to tell a story across all of these different, what would traditionally be different point solutions. Being able to tell a story and actually use that information to better your security posture.
So, Brandon, when you engage a customer, so let me ask this question. When you engage a customer, can you walk through that? Because if a customer's going to come to us in the future, and we're going to send this video to them, and they're going to say, how can we expect to engage with you? What is your analysis process? How are you going to view their environment? What questions are you going to come to ask? I think it's important because I want somebody to look at this video and go, by the way, okay, this is what I expect. So what is that from an engineering standpoint?
Right. I mean, a lot of times it's figuring out where the issues are, right? First off, it's, what, from a discovery perspective, what's the landscape look like today? What's the security landscape? What's the network landscape? Okay. And then talking about being able to converge that, right? But it's figuring out where the problem lies. Because most of the time, if you're shopping around, there's either a problem, whether it's money, right? Hey, we're looking to save some money by doing something different, or it's hey, we're having some type of problem, application performance is poor. Whether it's that, it's hey, MPLS cost is really high, and our site-to-site, we have no visibility, right, into that site-to-site communication, or we now have a remote workforce just because that's the way we've gone, and now we don't have any control of those users. So we hear a lot of going in and customer, a lot of hey, we're zero trust is a big buzzword right now, right? So how can we control all of these different people across the globe, have visibility, and still be able to secure them without having to have come by 10 different solutions to do that.
So you'll sit down with the customer, you'll look at their environment, they'll walk through it, they'll say, these are the 3 problems I want you to solve.
Right.
Okay. So when you're looking at that and you're looking at advisor engaging, what are the 3 things you want us to bring to you? Because the client's got to give us this data. We have to access the data somehow. We have to understand it. There's usually a gap between knowledge. I think we have a vast amount of knowledge in this area. But what 3 questions do you want us to be able to deliver to you as a solutions engineer that make a difference for you to be able to design an environment?
Sure. And one is, what's the landscape, right? The other is, what's the problem? I think that's the key one for whenever we're going in an opportunity, right? Is there an actual problem that we're trying to solve? Otherwise, you're moving from one solution to another solution, right? So in my mind, that's the number one thing. What problem are we trying to solve? Again, it could be anything. It could be what's the ROI of moving to a different solution, but A lot of the times, if there's three, so that's the number one. Now from the seller side,
I mean, from a seller side, I'm looking at it from typically, we have, like I said earlier, we have our three core. Like I said, there's really network. From an edge standpoint, it's the network piece. We need to send their network, right? Is it MPLS, DIAs, point-to-points?
You want topology and you want
topology
to
of the network. That's the first thing. Security thing, the security piece, that's where, I'm not saying, look, I think we've all, it's a question that it's hard to ask sometimes from a security. I think just because of confidence and they're scared what they're going to ask back. We see that a lot. But at a high level, it's really what security are you using today? And you can just ask a simple question like, what hardware do you have in place today? And you said, when does that life cycle end? That's the easiest questions I usually see, because it'll get the conversation started like, oh, we've got Fortinets at the edge, or we got Palos at the edge. Oh, we've got a life cycle, we're working with an MSP, we've got a contract till X. We paid up CapEx cost, right? Okay, all right, mental note, take that down. And then remote user from a ZTNA perspective, how many remote users do you have? Where are they located? Are they dispersed, blah, blah, blah? How are they being secured today coming back into the network? Are you using a VPN concentrator, or just how are they being secured coming back into the applications? That's a very high level, but those are the three core that I look at. And then, he could obviously get more granular as the questions need to be asked on the feature set.
So we'll kind of following up to that. I think that there's more than two scenarios, but two easy scenarios is greenfield, right? No network security, and then more mature IT point solutions all over the place. Right, so walking into, we understand what obviously the value proposition around kind of the single source for that, but I mean, going into that, how important is it to know what their current ZTNA or CASB services that they have in place today from a point solution perspective?
I think it's important because kind of one of the differentiators with CATO from at least on the security side is it's kind of an a la carte menu on the security front, right? So understanding to Ron's point where they are with that point product, CASB solution today, are they happy with it? Is it doing what they're trying to achieve? Because there's CASB providers out there, being transparent, that are great at what they do. And coming to CATO, it's, hey, can we take that piece? Because we may be able to do exactly what you're doing with that CASB provider that can do something very extensive that maybe we can't do, but you can bring that same service over to CATO because maybe they're only using a one niche piece of that CASB product. We can converge that over into a single technology, give you a single place to go, and potentially give you some ROI there from a management perspective. Again, being in the same place on the network and the security front.
Yeah, and to that point, how do you work with third-party security application software tools that are currently in place today?
It depends on what it is. A lot of times we work perfectly fine right next to them. You can run them in line. You can run them. We can sometimes help optimize the route to that maybe cloud service that you're using that may be providing one of these. But also we have API connectivity to a lot of the applications out there now where we can actually pull that information in and use that for correlation, think log correlation. So now we can even use that information to better our story that we're telling you so that you can use that to again improve your security posture.
Right, so example, organization has Rapid7 deployed, right?
Right.
They're not gonna get rid of Rapid7 to bring in CATO.
Right.
Replace that, they're gonna keep it. So working with that, right, working with the logs, right, making sure you're working together with the current posture versus basically olive branching off of it.
Yeah, we're not here to pull out everything. If you're happy with the solution, let's figure out how we can work with it, right?
Right, or crawl, walk, run, right? Because
Exactly.
it's a framework at the end of the day, like what you're doing is a framework. So,
yeah, we can come in different ways. I mean, a lot of times, CATO's been traditionally
just
known,
here.
Yeah, CATO's been traditionally known just here, SD-WAN.
Right.
I'd say 97%, and probably not, it's probably even higher, I bet it's 99% of our sales are SD-WAN within this ecosystem, right? Because they were always network first people. What's happening now, it's interesting, it's changing. Before, we would only get this piece first, we'd get a ton of upsells later on the security stack because our team would go in and sell the security because the partner, land and expand. Now, what's happening, the TSDs, they've gotten better on the security training.
Yeah.
So we're seeing more of this and this being sold at the first
There's a
sale.
bundle on the front end.
I also
On the front
believe
end,
that
fine,
you're,
which
you're
is
seeing
great.
more of a focus on the network security from the customers, where
Right.
it hasn't historically been a big focus.
Right, it's always been by
It's
itself, and then we'll get
edge
this later. Which is, so CATO could sell security by itself, we call it SSE, such a play of words, access, whatever. But on the SSE part, if a company has their own, maybe they have VeloCloud at the edge, or Versa, they can just buy our SSE and use just the security only. So they don't have to use SD-WAN first. It's always been traditionally like, oh, I have to buy your network first. No, you don't. You keep your VeloCloud, whatever you're using at the edge, and just use our security. The same goes for the ZTNA over here on the remote users. You might have Velo, Palo Alto, and be happy as a clam, but you want to do something for your remote users, we can come in just at the ZTNA piece.
Yeah.
So one last question, could I cut this off? If you were to think about what a client, when they look at partnering with a advisor, okay, and you're sitting in front of them and you're engaged, what is it that they're expected to do to create a great experience that you see for the client and you see for CATO? What is that?
I mean, I think we've said it a few times up here, is identifying a problem. What's hard when partners bring us an opportunity, like, hey, we talked about this, they've got Meraki. Well, great, they've got Meraki, they're probably happy with Meraki. It's low cost, it's cheap, they're probably happy with it.
A lot of it too.
Right. There's not a problem. Now, let's take that, say, local North domestic customer, right? Maybe they had a site in Europe. Now, Meraki's not the answer. Now you need something to optimize that application across the ocean, right? Now we're talking milliseconds. That's where our network comes into play. That's the value proposition. Now I'm going to solve a problem for that application performance. China's one of our best use cases. Imagine all these companies working in China. They're not going to set a server up in China. Their server's going to be in the United States, right? The milliseconds, what's 180 milliseconds? Imagine that times around the world. I don't want to get into the math here. It's a long damn way. Light only goes so far, so fast, right? So that round trip's horrible. So what they do is they leverage our backbone, and we're going to solve that application performance problem back in the users in China.
Interesting. So there's use cases specific to international transit of application that you guys are targeting. And so, I mean, I think that's not something most advisors dig into. So I think, that's something that
But it goes back to our core of our conversation when you talk about when I got into this whole thing. It was that application.
focus.
Before it was just always network. Yeah, it was network. Now it's 100% application. Where are the applications? Where do they reside? Are they in a cloud-based application? Are they premise-based data center? So knowing where those at, and then where are the branch offices? Where are those end users sitting? And then how is that working? Are they having problems? And so again, I'm finding that application performance problem is what I'm trying to solve.
No, it makes sense.
And then how are you securing it?
So yeah, I mean, you guys have done this, here's the foundation, checkbox. We want that into one environment, so we own the code, so it's not going out as subs, so that tells
Yeah.
a very strategic
It's a
story.
single pass architecture. We're not, behind the scenes, we're not using any other vendors. This is CATO's all the way through. We've created this IP, this is ours. Just give a little throw, our CEO, Shlomo Kramer, he started in Imperva, started Checkpoint firewalls, so he knows security. He just saw that this is pretty smart to add a network on top of it and make it cloud-based.
Logical. Well, thank you for the partnership.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.